Let's go Dolphins! Something is happening behind the scenes with the Miami Dolphins that isn't being publicized, but it should be. A decision is being made quietly, behind closed doors, and if everything goes as some expect, it could completely change the future of this franchise in 2026. We're talking about a play that doesn't seem flashy, doesn't go viral on social media, but has the potential to impact every play of the offense, and perhaps even define whether this team finally takes the next step or not. But here's the real question. Why are so few people talking about it? Before I explain everything to you, don't forget to like this post if you truly believe the Dolphins are building something special. And I want to hear from the true believers. Leave a comment right now saying, I'm optimistic about this team. Without further ado, let's go. There's a story circulating in the league that might not be about Miami directly, but it carries a powerful lesson, one that the Dolphins must pay close attention to. What's happening inside another organization right now highlights something that often gets overlooked. Sometimes the most important move of an offseason isn't the flashy signing, not the big-name trade, but a decision that flies completely under the radar. We're talking about a complete organizational shift, new leadership, new coordinators, and most importantly, a massive bet on coaching over raw talent. And here's why that matters to Miami. Last season showed us something very clear. When your offensive line struggles, everything else becomes harder. It doesn't matter how explosive your weapons are, how creative your play calling is, or how talented your quarterback may be. If the trenches aren't solid, the entire offense feels it. And that's exactly the situation being addressed in the example we're analyzing here. The numbers were brutal. Pressure rates above 42%, efficiency near the bottom of the league, and constant breakdowns in execution. That's not just a small issue. That's the kind of weakness that can completely derail a playoff run. Now here's where things get fascinating. Instead of going all in on proven veterans, instead of spending big money to patch the problem quickly, the organization made a different choice. They leaned into development. They trusted coaching. They brought in a specialist, someone known for building offensive lines, teaching technique, and creating cohesion from young and proven players. And this is where the conversation becomes very real for Dolphins fans. Because Miami is facing similar questions. Do you invest heavily in established talent to fix issues immediately? Or do you trust your coaching staff to develop younger players and build something sustainable? What we're seeing here is a clear gamble. The offensive line might actually be less experienced than before. There are question marks at key positions. Young players stepping into big roles. A potential rookie coming in through the draft. On paper, it doesn't scream dominance. But internally, there's belief. Belief that the right coach can transform that unit. Belief that discipline, timing, and execution can be taught at a high level. Belief that cohesion matters just as much, if not more, than individual talent. And if that belief is correct, everything changes. Because when an offensive line clicks, it unlocks the entire offense. The running game becomes more efficient. Play action becomes more dangerous. The quarterback gets time, confidence, rhythm. Suddenly, what looked like a weakness becomes a strength. But let's not ignore the risk. Relying on youth is never guaranteed. Development takes time. Mistakes happen. And in a league where every game matters, patience can be costly. That's the tension, urgency versus long-term vision. There's also the draft factor. This strategy only works if you hit on the right prospects. If you bring in a young lineman who can grow quickly, adapt, and execute under strong coaching, you're building a foundation for years. But if that pick doesn't develop as expected, you're right back where you started, facing the same problems, just with less experience. And that's why this approach is so polarizing. It's bold, it's calculated, but it's also risky. And as Dolphins fans, you have to ask yourselves, because this could easily mirror decisions Miami will have to make very soon. Do you want the team to chase immediate results with proven players? Or are you willing to trust a long-term vision built on coaching and development? Because what we're seeing here is a franchise choosing identity over shortcuts, choosing structure over splash moves, choosing to build something that lasts instead of something that just looks good on paper. And if it works, it could completely reshape how teams approach roster building moving forward. But if it doesn't, it could set them back in a big way. And this is exactly where things start to get even more intense. Because the deeper you look into this strategy, the more you realize it's not just about fixing a problem. It's about redefining the entire identity of a team. Because let's take this one step further. When an organization decides to trust coaching over proven talent, they're not just making a football decision. They're making a philosophical one. And that philosophy impacts everything, from how players are developed, to how the locker room responds, to how the team performs under pressure when the season is on the line. And here's the part that should really grab your attention as a Dolphins fan. This approach creates a chain reaction. If the offensive line improves, not just slightly, but significantly, suddenly the entire offense operates differently. The playbook opens up. The run game becomes more consistent. The quarterback doesn't feel rushed. Drives last longer. Time of possession increases. And most importantly, the team starts controlling the tempo of the game instead of reacting to it. That's how contenders are built. Not just with stars, but with structure. Now, think about what that means in a playoff scenario. Games get tighter. Margins get smaller. And the teams that win are usually the ones that dominate the line of scrimmage. That's where championships are decided. And that's exactly why this quiet move we've been talking about could end up being the most important one of all. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Because while all of this is happening on the offensive side, there's also a strategic balance being built through the draft. The organization isn't just focused on one area. They're exploring defensive reinforcements, evaluating prospects who can immediately impact the physicality of the team. That tells you something very important. This isn't a one-dimensional rebuild. This is a complete vision. A vision where the team becomes dominant in the trenches again. A vision where physicality returns as the core identity. A vision where every piece, coaching, youth, development, and draft strategy fits together like a puzzle. But let's not ignore the pressure that comes with this. Because if you're going to rely on young players, if you're going to trust development, if you're going to bet on coaching, then results have to come. Maybe not instantly, but fast enough to justify the risk. And that's where the tension builds. Because fans don't just want potential. They want wins. They want playoff runs. They want to feel like the team is one step away, not 2 or 3 years down the line. So now you've got two timelines colliding. The short-term expectation to compete right now, and the long-term vision of building something sustainable. And balancing those two, that's one of the hardest things to do in the NFL. But if there's one thing that stands out from everything we've broken down here, it's this. The teams that truly succeed are the ones that know exactly who they are. Not the ones chasing trends. Not the ones making desperate moves. But the ones with a clear identity and the patience to execute it. And that's why this entire situation should matter to you as a Dolphins fan. Because Miami is either going to follow a similar path or go in a completely different direction. And whatever choice they make, it's going to define what this team looks like in 2026. And this is where everything comes full circle. Because once you understand the risk, the philosophy, and the potential payoff, you start to see the bigger picture more clearly than ever. This isn't just about one unit. This isn't just about one season. This is about setting a standard that carries into the future. Because when a team commits to development the way we've been discussing, they're essentially saying, we believe in our system more than we believe in quick fixes. And that kind of mindset doesn't just impact one position group, it spreads across the entire roster. Young players buy in. Veterans adapt. Coaches become more influential than ever. And suddenly, the culture inside the building starts to shift. Now imagine that scenario translating to Miami. Imagine a Dolphins team where the offensive line isn't just good enough, but actually becomes a strength. Where the unit plays with discipline, communication, and confidence. Where mistakes decrease week after week because the coaching is elevating every single player on the field. That's when things get dangerous. Because once the foundation is strong, everything built on top of